Nationals and Liberal MPs are warning opposition leader Peter Dutton against taking a 2035 emissions reduction target to the next federal election, saying it would worsen the cost of living crisis for regional and vulnerable Australians. This story in The Australian today, who says that the Nationals, according to that front page story, want the coalition to drop the current policy of net zero emissions by 2050. Well, joining me live is Leader of the Nationals and Shadow Agriculture Minister David Littleproud. So, David, what do you think of this story, and should the coalition be ditching net zero targets, in your opinion?
Oh, look, the only international commitment we've had to make was one of 2050. We've got plenty of time on that, and we've got sovereignty of all our resources. If we didn't sign up to that when Scott Morrison and Barnaby Joyce were there, we would have been paying up to 3% more on your interest rate, and we would have had border tariff adjustments put on our exports. But what people are feeling at the moment is Anthony Albanese's net zero and this reckless race to 82% renewables by 2030. I think it'll be difficult for us to put, in all honesty, a target on 2035, and that's demonstrated by the fact that we want to shift the energy debate about removing the ban on nuclear energy, and there's a lag factor in being able to achieve that. So if we're going to change that and shift the energy mix in this country and take away that ban, then that's obviously going to have a flow-on effect onto total emissions, and that's complemented also with carbon capture storage for our gas and coal. But I think we're now getting to a point where the renewables have lost their social licence. We're actually destroying the very thing they're there to protect. We're knocking down native vegetation, remnant vegetation and habitat, and we're taking away our food security and driving up our food bills by putting these wind and solar factories on top of prime agricultural land with the 28,000 kilometres of transmission lines. We've got time to pause, to plan, to get this right.
Under the Paris Agreement, the federal government is required to finalise a 2035 target by 2025. If we don't, are you worried that Australia will become an outcast on the world stage?
No, because we have a credible pathway of embracing technology like nuclear energy, and let me say that the only binding part of the agreement is 2050. We actually will not be penalised, as the advice that I've received, in respect of border adjustment tariffs or capital becoming weighted against us, so long as we have a credible pathway to 2050, and there's plenty of time to achieve that. And that's why the energy policy that we put forward will be one that has a total energy mix that brings everything into the equation, takes away the ban, and instead of politicians yelling at one another, let's let the market decide. I've got the courage and my conviction to be proved wrong on nuclear energy. Happy to be proved wrong. But Chris Bowen, if he's got that same courage, take away the ban and let the marketplace fight it out, and let's prove who was right and who was wrong. I think there is a pathway for us, particularly with nuclear energy. We've got to have the courage of conviction, but also the courage in this country to change the psyche of us saying why we can't do things rather than how can we. We're a smart nation, and we've got to start to back ourselves, and we've got sovereignty of all our resources. We have the solutions here, and that means it takes time, but we've got plenty of time to achieve that without hurting people, keeping reliable, affordable energy and protecting traditional industries like our coal and gas industries.
Okay. The nation's supermarket giants have been warned that all options are on the table, including government intervention to bring down grocery prices. The Albanese government makes the cost of living relief its central policy goal ahead of the next election. The Prime Minister is expected to announce today that Labor Cabinet Minister Craig Emerson will lead the review of the Food and Grocery Code of Conduct. You're not happy that it's taken so long. What do you think of this announcement?
Well, I mean, we welcome the fact that they finally got their act together. It took them 100 days from when they first announced this review to find somebody to lead it. And now the problem is the cost of living crisis was not now, it was last year. And I don't know where Anthony Albanese's been for the last 18 months, but if he's only just realised there's a cost of living crisis, and in fact supermarkets and food plays a very big part in inflation staying higher, why wouldn't you have pulled the levers you could have earlier? And the lever that he's pulled was one that was a statutory review anyway. This was a review that was going to happen. What we said is we didn't need another review. We needed an investigation into prices at the checkout, particularly for meat, which fell by 60 to 70% in June. It only fell by about 8% at the checkout. And you look at the fresh produce, you're paying $2.20 for a zucchini to the farmer, but $6.50 at the checkout. They're cleaning up, and they're cleaning up at consumers' expense. And if they had have taken our advice back in October and November and had an ACCC investigation, they could have actually compelled the CEOs to appear before Christmas and given advice, and in fact even given penalties to the supermarkets had they found anything. And we could have changed the course of Christmas for many families out there had this government appreciated the gravity of this cost of living crisis. They had the tools sitting in front of them, but out of bloody mindedness, they just ignored it and have gone down some other path, and now will complement this with a Senate inquiry, with a bunch of politicians sitting around asking questions, rather than the ACCC, who have the expertise, who have the tools and the knowledge to understand intricately the market policies and pricing policies of supermarkets.
David Littleproud, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.